How do you know if you have enough money or assets to support the retirement life you want and not run out of money? That's what we're going to address on today's show. Thanks for tuning in. If we haven't met before, I'm Mike Potter, certified financial planner, professional, and owner of True Wealth Financial. I believe that retirement should be prosperous, enjoyable, and purposeful, but a lot of people struggle with navigating the path into retirement. And it makes sense, right? Money and retirement is confusing, complex, and challenging, and it's all new to you. You've never done it before. This show is dedicated to helping Christians create and optimize their retirement plan so that they can retire with confidence. Today, I want to talk about feasibility testing. Feasibility testing, essentially determining if you have enough money to retire given the lifestyle that you want. Because if you can solve this, if you can come up with a feasible plan of record, it's going to help you greatly as you retire with confidence. So over the last couple of weeks, we've been walking through the basic initial aspects of formulating a retirement plan. We first find your plan. We use the needs, wants, and wishes construct to help us get out of our heads on paper of what we want our retirement life to be. We introduced you to Steve and Sarah Starter, our case study that we're using to illustrate the initial steps of a retirement plan. Last week, we talked about how they're going to pay for it. So we outlined their 4 aspects of capital that they're going to have to use to pay for their retirement. And next we need to do is we need to determine how feasible it is, right? And that's the idea of testing to see if the money that we have and the future from an assets and an income perspective, as well as the things that we've outlined that we want, how reasonable is it that we can pay for those things and give us some level of assurance that we won't run out of money? We call that feasibility testing. Now, obviously, there's no guarantees in life, right? There's risks, there's perils, there's hazards. We live in a fallen, Adamic, natured world, and so bad things happen. So there is no guarantees. But what we're trying to do is we want to try, before we step away from retirement, we want to see, do we have a reasonable assurance that we can live the life that we want and not run out of money? Reasonable assurance. That's what we're looking for here. And there's 2 primary ways we do that. One essentially takes where we are in the present and projects out. We use what we call Monte Carlo Simulation. We're going to talk about that today. The other one essentially goes out to the future and brings everything back today to a balance sheet. And then at the end of that, we can determine in both cases, are we overfunded? Do we have too much money and we need to dream a little bit more? Are we kind of underfunded, right? Meaning we don't have enough money, we're constrained or underfunded, or what we're looking for is at least adequate, right? And so kind of the not too hot, not too cold, just right kind of thing. And that's the third thing we're going to address today. So the first thing we're going to unpack here is, at a high level, what is a Monte Carlo simulation? And I'm going to illustrate that in a retirement planning platform called Money Guide Pro. And so they have a great simulation that we can use in there. It's a platform that's used by financial advisors, and it does a good job of illustrating Monte Carlo simulations. So just to give us a little story that we have to enter data with here, we have Monty and Monaco. They are 65 years old and they are retired. They have goals of living till age 90. So they're retired now, anticipate living to age 90. So their money needs to last them 25 years. They have a goal of living off about $4,000 a month. About half of that will come from Social Security here. So $2,000 a month will come from Social Security. Additionally, they have a 401k, traditional 401k with about $500,000 in it. So a Monte Carlo simulation essentially is we take from today and we project down to the future 1,000 different trials. We project what the market's going to do for 1,000 different instances over the course of, in this case, their lifetime. So we run that. We can see a spaghetti chart here with all kinds of various trials inside of it. Essentially, what this tells us is that 620 of those 1,000 trials end in a success, meaning they have at least $1 left at the end of the plan. And so we can see this here as a probability of success. We take the number of total trials and we divide it by the number of successful trials, and we get a probability of success. So when we see this in Right Capital or in any other financial planning platform that you might be using, a probability of success is how many of those 1,000 trials, the percentage of them, how many of them end up positive at the end of the plan. Now, what we're going to do is we're going to look at some individual trials here. And again, this particular platform does a great job of illustrating the details of it. So this is the 500th plan. So the middle plan or the median. So not the best, not the worst, the one right in the middle. It ranks them from best to worst. And we can see here in this particular trial that it says that the market is going to be down in 2024, and then up in 25, up in 26, 7, 8, 9, and 30, and then down, and then up, and then down. And again, we have no idea what the future is going to be. This is just a projection. And we can see here, based upon what they have, how their money's invested, what they're taking out, so that $2,000 a month, and what the markets are doing, we can see what's happening to their portfolio. This is just that, essentially the portfolio value of that investment. So we can see it goes down a little bit, but then it goes up, 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 and up, and then it has a down year, so their portfolio comes down, then it goes up again, and then the market's down, so the portfolio comes down, and it varies. Now, that's just one trial, one instance of those 1,000. The 501st trial is different than the 500s, and the 502nd is going to be different yet. And there's a handful of different trials in here. And so they just are projecting out. We have no idea what the future is going to hold, but it could be this. Now, let's look at the worst trial, right? I'd say, a quarter of these are worse than markets we've ever seen. For example, we've never seen a market that will do this. It's down 31%, followed by another year of down almost 24%, followed by another year of 12, followed by another year of 10, followed by another year of 15. In the past 100 years or so, we have not had a market that has had that steep, that drastic 5 consecutive years down. This is the biggest risk that you have when you retire, is that you retire in a bad market, assuming you are dependent upon market returns for your retirement income. So what's the effect of the portfolio? It's down, it goes from 500 to 325. And then second year, we're less than half, right? That'd be a pretty scary retirement. 2 years in, half of your income's gone. And then it keeps going down, and keeps going down, keeps going down, keeps going down. But again, this is the worst case of these 1,000, and it's worse than anything we've ever seen in the past, right? So the chances of this happening essentially are very, 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 very low. It hasn't happened in 100 years. Corollary to that, let's go to the best trial. So the best trial ends up with them having $14 million in their portfolio. They started with 500,000. 25 years later, they have 14 million despite taking money out. Well, what is that? Well, we have an up year, 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 an up year. This is up 43%, and then followed by a 50%, followed by another 50%, followed by a couple years later, another 47%, right? So out of the 25 trials, we only have 3 down markets. That's pretty much unheard of as well. We have, the idea of having, of 5 years, 3 of them being over 43% doesn't really happen. 25 years, only having 3 down years, that doesn't normally happen. Normally in a decade, historically, we have about 3 down years per decade and 7 up, right? So this, again, is better than anything we've ever seen. Could it happen? I mean, I suppose it could, but the probability of it happening are pretty slim. So essentially what we're looking at, and you'll see this in Right Capital, we want to concentrate on somewhere between the 250th trial and the 750th trial. That's kind of what we're looking at. That's more in line what we might see. And the 500th trial is the idea that we have, that's the middle one. So down below here, you can see what the portfolio would do after 5 years and 10 years on those 3 various scenarios, right? You can see that this one, we do end up out of money into that 750th trial. Essentially, they run out of money, about 20 years from now. So but this is illustrating Monte Carlo simulations. Again, the idea is that it is just future returns, right? It is just future simulations of what might happen in the future. So hopefully now you understand a little bit about what Monte Carlo is, how it uses 1,000 trials that are randomized, and it can go from, very, very great outcome to a very, very poor outcome and everything in between. So now what I want to do is I want to revisit the case study a little bit of Steve and Sarah, refamiliarize with them, and then we'll look at that same kind of testing in Right Capital and see how that plays out more specifically for their scenario. So now coming back to Right Capital, I want to revisit our case study. So I want to refamiliarize you briefly with Steve and Sarah Starter. They are 60 years old. They are beginning their retirement planning. They have 2 children, both of whom are married, each with a grandchild. From an investment perspective, Steve has a 401k, a Roth IRA, and a traditional rollover IRA. Sarah has a 403b and a Roth IRA. They have a money market account of about $40,000. They own their home and they have 2 vehicles. In terms of their goals, Steve wants to retire at age 65 when he can get Medicare. Sarah wants to retire from her teaching job at 63. They anticipate needing about $4,000 a month in today's dollars to live off of for retirement. They're going to get insurance through Steve's work until he retires 65, and then they'll both transition to Medicare. In terms of their goals, they have 3 levels, and we unpacked how to do this back in how to define your retirement plan. We have their base life, their base needs. So in addition to their spending, they like to keep $30,000 in emergency fund. They want to do some extra giving of about $5,000, some weekend travel, holidays, things like that, about $4,000. Steve is a bicycle enthusiast, so he does some biking. Sarah works in her gardens and flower beds. They spend some money on their hobbies. They like to get a new car, one car every 5 years or so, the first one being in 2026. And they anticipate spending about $25,000 on that car. So trading in their car plus about $25,000. Those 5 things is their base life, including their monthly income. In terms of what they would want, they'd want, if they could afford it, some additional spending, maybe $1,000 extra a month. So instead of 4, they would like $5,000. They like to do some extra travel, a missions trip once a year, as well as an overseas trip. They like to do some additional giving. If they could afford it, they like to get a nicer car. So instead of spending $25,000, they like to spend $30,000, $35,000 on that every 5 years. They like to give some money for the grandkids' college. So those are their wants, if they can afford those. In terms of wishes, the extraordinary things, the luxurious things, if you will, Sarah would like to take the kids and the grandkids to an all-inclusive Disney trip. Steve would like to bike the Tour de France path in France. They like to go on a world cruise. They like to leave each of their children $500,000 at death. And they like to leave their church an additional $200,000. In terms of income that they have, Steve has his income as a project manager. Sarah has hers as a teacher. Steve's going to work 2 years after doing some part-time consulting after he retires from his primary job, working part-time, making for about 2 or 3 years, and then getting Social Security at age 67, where he would maximize the spousal benefit for Sarah. Sarah has a little pension that will start at age 63 when she retires. She'll get her Social Security at 65. She anticipates maybe getting an inheritance from her parents, essentially in the next 10 years or so, of about $200,000. They're contributing to their retirement plans at work, as well as their Roth IRAs, and they have a couple of other expenses in terms of they have some pre-living expenses now, which is similar to their retirement expenses, as well as some insurance that they pay primarily through Steve's payroll deduction. So hopefully that catches you up with our case study of Sarah and Steve. Next, we're going to basically look at the Monte Carlo analysis for them in Right Capital. Before we do that, though, if you're finding this information helpful and valuable, please hit the like button. Helps me know to do more shows like this. Plus, it's a great way to say thank you. So jumping back into Right Capital here, we're going to look at Steve and Sarah's situation. By going to the retirement module in Right Capital, it behind the scenes is running those 1,000 trials. That doesn't give us those individual simulations. That's why I wanted to show you in Money Guide Pro. What this is saying is based upon all the things we've put in for Steve and Sarah to date, that 6% or 60 of those 1,000 trials end up with money at the end of the plan. We can see in the confidence tab essentially what is happening here. So we can see at any given year, 61, 62, all the way to the end of their plan, various different levels. So you can see at age 65, for example, the median trial, which is that dark blue line, that's the 500th trial. It tells us that they have about $1.1 million in assets, right? Investable assets, portfolio. So it does include their house, doesn't include their cars, doesn't include their Social Security, but just in their portfolio. The 25% or the 250th trial has $941,000, and the 750th trial or the 750th best trial has $1.3 million. They retire, they start taking money out, and you can see most of the plans end up without them having money. So now obviously you can see their initial feasibility testing for Steve and Sarah, it doesn't look very good, but it lends itself to the question of what is good, right? And so essentially what we're looking for is we kind of think of green light, red light, yellow light, right? That's kind of the construct here. So red, Steve and Sarah right now currently would be red, right? Anything sub 70, it's not very good, right? We would call that underfunded if it's below 60, constrained if you're in the 60 to 70, but you're trying to get it up above 70. The way I kind of think about that is C-cells degree from a college perspective. And so you want to get at least a C. That's what you're looking for, average, right? Now, some people, obviously you don't want to be below average. Some people, though, are over average, right? Some people are A students. So anything 90 or above is what we call overfunded. And that's the idea where you have essentially too much money. And so at that point, you'd really be encouraged to kind of dream a little bit more, spend a little bit more, give a little bit more, have a little bit more, right? At least, if nothing else, you want to put some sort of legacy goals of what you want to accomplish at the end of life. Because, you don't want to just basically at the end of your life have all this money sitting around and you not have done some of the things that you want to do. So that's kind of the idea. And so we really use those two things as guardrails. We'll talk about that in a future episode. So what will happen is over time, your probability of success will vary based upon market returns, based upon savings, based upon inflation, based upon actual costs, risks that occur to you, things like that. And this is where you want to really stay in touch with your plan, not just initially, but on a regular basis. If you're overfunded or underfunded, this is where you can go back and begin to adjust things and negotiate with yourself of what you might want to change. So for example, we'll dive back into Steve and Sarah's situation and change a couple things to see at least if we can get to an adequate plan that we can use as a baseline going forward. Down below here is where we can do a gazillion amounts of what if analysis. We can change a whole bunch of things inside of here and see what the impact is. And if that's not enough, we can always add more. So there's no end of things that we can what if scenario. So for example, I'm going to go in and take out all of their wants, right? So we just get down to essentially their base retirement. So I've gone through and changed all of their wants and wishes to 0 just to see can they have the base great life that they're looking for. And we come back up and we can see now that we have a probability of 80%. So the original base plan had 6%. Making these changes here, what if scenarios, if you will, we can see that we have an 80% probability of success. So 800 of the 1,000 trials end up with money at the end of the plan. The median trial, the 500 trial, essentially having 1.5 million. Again, we can see that on the confidence tab here. Over time, at the end of the plan, the middle blue line or the median trial, the one in the middle, has $1.5 million. So maybe now we were too extreme one way, too much spending, and now we have too much spending. So we can go back and change a handful of various different things. There's no end of what if scenarios. So for example, one of the things that this is very dependent upon is how their investments are actually invested. So it's taking, in both cases, their current allocation, what's in there. If we change it as an illustration to a dimensional tilt portfolio strategy that we use in our practice here, that has a positive effect on the probability of success, more trials ending up in success, as well as the median trial ending up now with $2.7 million. Right now, is that what they're going to have? Probably not, because it's just a projection, right? We don't know. We're going in the future, And we're saying based upon what the market might do of those 1,000 trials, again, some of them being worse trials than we've ever seen, some of them being better markets than we've ever seen, what we're trying to get to is a probability of success of at least 70. So hopefully you can understand how this testing, feasibility testing works out, at least from a Monte Carlo simulation way. Again, that's the idea of going from today and looking forward. There's a second feasibility testing that we're going to look at next week, essentially that takes the future and brings it back today, that we're going to unpack next week. Today, we talked about testing your retirement plan for feasibility. Again, we used Steve and Sarah to illustrate the process. And if you're still with me and finding this information helpful, consider subscribing. Imagine what it'll be like to have a feasible plan of record. You know what you want in retirement, you know what you have, and again, you have a reasonable assurance that your assets will last a lifetime. This is what retirement planning is all about. It'll really boost your confidence and peace as you navigate into retirement. Now, ideally, all of this should be done in conjunction with a comprehensive retirement plan that looks at all other aspects of life: insurance, estate planning, retirement planning, taxes, et cetera, et cetera. If you don't have a retirement plan, a good first step might be to engage in a True Wealth assessment. It's a financial checkup of sorts to let you know how retirement ready you are. We'll help you understand where you are holistically, just like Steve and Sarah. We'll give you access to right capital that you can test for your own feasibility, and we'll give you a one-page plan of recommendations that you can use to improve your journey into retirement. If you already have a retirement plan, a good micro action might be this week to revisit the plan, test for its current feasibility, determine, are you green, right, overfunded, yellow, inadequate funded, or red, underfunded, and maybe change one thing in your plan just to see how that has an impact. Remember, testing your retirement plan for feasibility will help you identify where you currently stand, inform you on the path forward, and help you to begin to make adjustments over time. Hopefully, this helps you on your path to a prosperous, enjoyable, and purposeful retirement. Till next time, hope you have Thanks again for taking the time to watch this week's episode of the True Wealth Financial Show. I encourage you to like, share, and subscribe so you don't miss any future episodes. Additionally, you can find more information on our website at www.truewealth.show. One final note, though, as we wrap up to today's show. While I hope the information was helpful, valuable, and insightful, it's really for information and educational purposes only. Prior to making any decisions or taking any actions, I'd strongly encourage you to talk to your legal, tax, estate, or financial advisor who's familiar with the unique circumstances of your particular personal situation. Thanks again for watching, and until next time, hope you have a great day.